This is the Louie T Network. Hey, either you're outside or you're
in the lab room.
Draft zone.
Who else can it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome. You are in the lab room. Of course, I'm your host, Louie. Thank you for joining me. This is the 2015 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where I aim to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2015 NFL Draft by looking at each and every single selection that is made by said team and giving them a grade by using our baseball grading scale. Single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts in the 2015 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, as I do not want to discount any of these players before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so, we get an aggregate score after tallying the grades of each and every single pick, apply bonuses when necessary, divide by the number of picks made in that team's draft, get a final score for that team's draft, move on to the next team in the process, picked by you. Yes, you, the viewers out there at home watching. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section. Leave that post stating two things: the phrase next, N-E-X-T, the word next, and the team you would like to see next. I don't care how you phrase it. Them boys got next, Jags up next, Colts, we next, whatever, as long as the team's name and the phrase next is in that post in the comment section and it is first, that team will be featured up next in the 2015 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. So that's how it works. The next team picked by you, the viewers, in the up format is none other than the Baltimore Ravens. And to me, nobody does it better, okay, than the Baltimore Ravens. And it's because of one man. And we know the slogan, man. In Ozzie we trust. That's right, Ozzie Newsome knows how to play the draft game. And damn it, he plays it well. And year after year, it's the selections that this guy makes that allows the Baltimore Ravens to never really rebuild. They just reload, okay? This team never is out of it. There's rarely a season. In fact, there's only been one season since John Harbaugh has been the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens where he and Joe Flacco, you know how I feel about my boy Joe, stay off my boy's back, okay? I'm not gonna tell you, but one time, have been out of the playoffs. One season. They've been together about 7 years now, I believe it is. Only one time those two have not made it to the playoffs. And when they get there, they always find a way to win at least one game. And so it's because of drafts like the one I'm about to talk about that allows this Ravens team to simply stay relevant in the NFL landscape. And if you want a blueprint on how to stay relevant as a good team in the league, consistently winning football games, look no further than the blueprint set by the man himself, Ozzie Newsome, and his Baltimore Ravens football team. Let's jump into their 2015 NFL Draft and talk about how they were able to get more good players to come in and help this franchise stay as one of the NFL's elite in the National Football League's 2015 NFL Draft. Look at the first round pick, 26th overall, wide receiver out of Central Florida. Breshad Perriman is the pick. Now this guy, he set the draft process ablaze with his 40 time and really put a lot of people on edge. Now, you were feeling some type of way about Breshad Perriman. There were a lot of feelings about him. Either you really were enamored by what he was able to bring to the table when he blazed that 4.26 40 that he ran at his pro day. Either you were enamored by what he was able to do, his size, his height, weight, speed. You know how we go with those height, weight, speed specimens. You know how that goes. Or you were saying the guy's got drop issues. He's really not that fast. You look at his game tape. He didn't play that speed. Whatever. All I know is this guy is a bloodlines guy. Dad played in the league for a number of years and was a very, very good player. I know that this guy was the guy at UCF. When he had opportunities, he made plays. He was the guy at UCF. And I also know that, yeah, he dropped the football, but this guy can play football. He's a playmaker, and he's only going to get better. And so I like the pick. This is a guy that you want to develop. You want to see him grow into that position, because they're not asking him to come in and be a guy. They're asking him to come in and be the guy. Now, he's going to have some help early on, but right now, the Ravens have always had issues at the wide receiver position. Always. That's always been a problem for them. They've never had guys come in and develop the way that they were supposed to. And so they rely heavily on their tight ends, which we'll talk about here in a second. And they rely heavily on their running game, which was a big success for them last year. Justin Forsett really bursted onto the scene and was huge in their success a season ago. But they need the receivers to step up. Steve Smith Sr. last year was tremendous for the first half of the season, and he fell off the table towards the end. What do you expect a 35, 36-year-old to do? So that was no surprise there. They need someone to step up. No longer is Torrey Smith on this roster. Taking his place is Brashad Perriman. They're looking for big things from this kid. I'm excited to see what the future holds for Brashad Perriman in a Baltimore Ravens uniform. I've already broken this kid down in my Draft Prospects 101 series. So if you're looking for a thorough breakdown of Brashad Perriman and what he brings to the table, check out my Draft 101 Prospects series. Instead of breaking them down, I'm just going to tell you what the Ravens did in that first round. 26th overall selection, wide receiver out of USC. They hit hard. They hit deep. Out of here. It's a home run for the Baltimore Ravens in the first round. I really like this kid, and I am excited for what he brings to the table for this Baltimore Ravens offense. Joe Flacco. My boy Joey Flacco can throw it a long way. And this kid can run a long way and go get the football. Let's see if they can't start making some beautiful music together in Baltimore. You move on to the second round. 55th overall selection, tight end out of Minnesota, Max Williams. This draft choice came with a little bit of intrigue. And you know, I like my draft with a little bit of spice, a little hot sauce to go. And you know, the draft can get monotonous, it can get boring very quickly. But for a guy like me who's a football fiend, I sit and watch anyway, okay? And so when I see some division on division hate crimes being participated in, I get a little excited, okay? And so to see the Ravens have to trade up in front of what they thought was a potential target in the Pittsburgh Steelers for Max Williams services, the Ravens jumped in front of the Steelers and got with the Arizona Cardinals, made the switch to come up and get a guy that they coveted at pick number 55. Now, whether the Steelers were really in a situation where they were going to make a selection and take Max Williams is anybody's guess. I mean, the Steelers have already come out and said, hey, we had no interest in taking this kid. We wanted a corner, and we were set on getting a second-round corner, which could be the truth. I believe Kevin Colbert. I don't believe he's telling the story, but hey, what is he supposed to say, okay? Even if Max Williams was their guy and they were set, dead set on taking this guy, why would I tell them and give the Ravens the satisfaction of knowing they took the player that we wanted in the second round with the 56th overall selection? So, hey, whatever. All I know is it's a game of chess when you get to the draft, not checkers. If you're a step too late, you lose. Ravens went ahead, took the initiative, and jumped in front of their AFC North rivals and slapped them in the face and took Max Williams again. We don't know if that's what the Steelers wanted to do, but guess what? The Ravens said, even if it is, you won't get a chance to do it. And so I love it. I love when I get some division on division foe crime in the draft. And so let's talk about Max Williams and what he brings to the table. Here's a prototype size 6'4", 249-pound tight end. So you're basically talking about 6'4", 250 is what you're dealing with here. And this guy, I was surprised. I'm going to tell you why I was surprised when I turned on the tape in a little bit. But he's a great athlete. And I don't really know what I was expecting from an athleticism-wise standpoint with Max Williams. I think I just went in thinking, okay, he's going to be okay, nothing great. And then you see some plays, especially that play in a bowl game. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, please go and Google it, YouTube it, whatever. If there's a play in the bowl game, his last game in his collegiate career. They're playing against, I want to say, I don't remember who they were playing against. It doesn't matter. It's a bowl game. They end up losing, but this was the highlight of that game. Max Williams catches a crossing route across the field, gets up the sideline, and it's really a beautiful throw. He gets open, and there's a defender behind him that can't catch up. There's a defender coming with a great angle, has an opportunity to get him down into corner. He goes for the legs. They always go for the legs. Max Williams knows this, jumps over that guy, hurdles him. It's a beautiful hurdle, okay? A lot of times I get angry when I see big guys like Max Williams jumping over defenders, because I'm like, hey, why are you leaving your feet? Lower your shoulder, be a big guy. But this was an instance where you saw the cut coming. Why not try to get over it? And he did. Jump clear over the guy, continues to run as he hits the ground, doesn't lose stride. Another defender comes up, decides, hey, he didn't do it right, so I'm gonna cut you this way. And he gives a barrel roll instead of just coming in and trying to go for the legs. His attempt doesn't work as Max Williams jumps over him as well en route to diving into the end zone. It is a beautiful play, and he does not step out of bounds. It's about a 50-yard touchdown catch and run. It's awesome, and it shows the athleticism that Max Williams possesses. Guy behind him couldn't catch him. Two guys tried to cut him, leaps over both of them, gets into the end zone, and that's the athleticism that he brings to the table. Outstanding hands. I didn't see this guy miss not one pass that was intended for him that was in his catch radius. And there were actually a couple of plays there where he kind of blew my mind. Where there was one right by the sidelines. He had to dive, and he was able to keep his body from going out of bounds while catching the football, while dragging that 1 foot that is requisite in college football. And the good thing was they were playing on an not astroturf, but you know, with those little black beads, you know, that field turf that has the little beads in there. So as he was dragging his foot out of bounds, making this tremendous play, you could see the beads shooting up, so it made it easy on the refs to say that, hey, he caught the football. It was a gorgeous catch. Then there was another play down the field, one-handed grab. He's got a guy literally holding on to one arm so he can't use the other arm. Ball's a little bit out in front, able to stretch that paw out there, stop the impact, bring it in with one hand. Gorgeous. I mean, the guy can catch the football. This is the part that surprised me. Remember I told you he surprised me on tape? I wasn't expecting a big-time blocker in the run game. And when you're an All-American, you can do everything. So I should have been a little bit more aware to the fact that he could block, but I wasn't expecting a blocker. I was expecting a pass-catching tight end that was a liability in blocking assignments. That's not what I got. This guy was stout at the point of attack. In fact, he blocked a lot more at Minnesota than I gave him credit for. He blocked a hell of a lot. A lot of the tape was him just stonewalling guys at the point of attack, getting to the second level, sealing off guys. He was excellent in the run game. As a blocker, I was thoroughly surprised. You're getting a complete football player here. So that's one of his last pros, is he's well-rounded. I mean, you get a guy with good hands, good athleticism, and he's a tremendous blocker. It just fits with what the Ravens like to do at the tight end position. And there's nothing worse than having an excellent receiving tight end that can't block worth a damn. It's just hard to really run your offense the way you want to, because deception really is the key in the National Football League. You got a tight end that can't block. Well, if he's in the game, a lot of times I know you're passing the football. That's not the case with Max Williams. And last but not least, his versatility. This guy lined up some of everywhere at Minnesota, which shows you why the Ravens thought so highly of him to make him a second-round selection. He lined up at H-back. He lined up at fullback. He lined up as an inline tight end, tight to the line. He was flexed out into the slot, and then he was out wide as a receiver, one-on-one with safeties and linebackers, and was winning matchups out there. So there isn't much he can't do on the football field as a tight end. So there is a lot to be excited about with this guy, Max Williams, coming out of Minnesota. And so you look at his cons now. He's not overly explosive. He's not going to blow you away with his speed, or anything like that. He's not a guy that's going to wow you with a lot of yards after the catch. That play that I just talked about in the bowl game was an anomaly. He's not a guy that's going to run away from a lot of defenders, especially at the next level. He played in the Big Ten. You know how I feel about Big Ten. A lot of cornbread eaters, a lot of guys that are bigger, not as fast and athletic, but are physical football players. So he was able to run away from some guys in the Big Ten. A lot of that is going to change. He's a 4.78 guy, so again, you're not running away from a lot of defenders running that fast. But again, he's such a well-rounded football player, and if you aren't careful, he's a sneaky athlete. He will run away from you like he did in that play in that bowl game. But the biggest issue for me, and I don't know this to be a fact, so you know I kind of try to stay away from issues like this because I can't gauge this on tape, is his maturity. Here's a guy that's a redshirt sophomore. You don't generally hear me talking about sophomores in the draft. You're usually talking about juniors and redshirt juniors and seniors and redshirt seniors. Here's a sophomore, okay? Redshirt. So he put up the requisite 3 years and he got out. So here's a guy that is still young, and you could tell how young he was throughout the process. I heard multiple reports. Normally you hear it once or twice, you're like, ah, whatever. When you hear it more than 3 or 4 times, you know it's a fact that this guy wasn't the best in the process. He lacked maturity. He was a guy that was blowing off interviews. He was showing up late. He was a guy that really didn't care about interviewing, and he had an attitude that said, I'm bigger than this, and I'm the guy you want, but you know, I'm not a team first guy. He came off as a little bit of a self-centered jerk throughout the process. I don't know anything about that. All I can tell you about is what I saw on tape. The guy's a football player. He's now in the league. He's in a really good, stable locker room with a lot of veterans that are going to keep him on the straight and narrow. I feel good about this selection. So good that in the second round, 55th overall selection, tight end out of Minnesota, Max Williams. Go ahead and put him on the board. Yes. So home run. Back-to-back jacks for the Baltimore Ravens in the first 2 rounds. He just fits what the Ravens do offensively. He fits in the mold of a Todd Heap. He fits in the mold of what the Ravens have done at the tight end position. Dennis Pitta, who has been dealing with a litany of injuries. He fits what the Ravens do at the tight end position, and the Ravens, and especially Joe Flacco, need a tight end that can not only catch the football, but be a difference maker in the offense. I feel like Max Williams can do exactly that for this Baltimore Ravens offense. You go to the third round, 90th overall selection, defensive tackle out of Iowa, Carl Davis is the selection. This is a really good football player, and I thought he was a second round football player. So to get this guy in the third round, I think is really, really good production for this Ravens football team. What else do you expect? This is Ozzie Newsome. You know Ozzie is getting value at every turn that you look. Ozzie is getting more value, and so he didn't fail here in the third round with Carl Davis. Let's talk about him. Big 6'5", 320 defensive lineman. So this is a big man, long limbs, can get the job done, and his size and girth allows him to be versatile. They can move him up and down this line. They can play him in a little bit of the nose if they like. They can play him outside. He played in a 4-3 defense, so he's going to be making a little bit of a defensive switch in terms of what they're going to be asking him to do in this Ravens 3-4 defensive front. But this is a guy that can play multiple fronts, and so we'll see how the Ravens decide to employ him. Probably looks more to me like a 5 technique, but I wouldn't be surprised if this guy played some nose as well. He's got brute strength, and anytime you start talking about guys with brute strength, you can talk about guys that can play the nose in the National Football League at the next level. This is a guy that I saw him bull rushing guys into the backfield. I saw him holding up at the point of attack, not against single coverage, but double coverage at times. He was standing up at the point of attack. So this is a guy that is extremely strong and stopped at the point of attack for his position. Very disruptive. That's another pro for Carl Davis. This is a guy that was extremely disruptive at Iowa, and I love disruptive football players along the defensive line because a lot of times defensive linemen don't get the credit they deserve because they don't always make the play. And you're not always going to make the play. You're not always going to be the guy that gets the stats, because even though you're the one making the play in the backfield and disrupting and blowing up the play, you may not be able to reap the benefits of it, but someone else will. And that's why I love disruptive defensive linemen, because a lot of times it's the play that you make that allows someone else to make a play and get the stats for that actual tackle or tackle for loss or sack. So in the case of Carl Davis, he's a guy, and let me lump this with another pro that I have down the line. He's a team defender. He does the dirty work. Okay, you need dirty work guys that are willing to get their hands dirty, do the things that no one else wants to do, because you don't get credit a lot of times for doing the dirty work. He's one of those players that will go into the backfield, take on double teams, blow up the fullback, mess the whole play up, and that'll allow a guy like C.J. Mosley to just walk unabated to the running back 3 yards in the backfield and make a tackle. Or get in there, blitz, up the A-gap, come scot-free, get a sack. It's guys like Carl Davis that allow guys to stay clean at the second level and make plays. He's got a quick swim move, and it's lightning quick. And the thing that makes his swim move unique is it comes from the tilted nose position. And what the tilted nose is, you know, most times when defensive linemen line up, they line up square to the offensive lineman. They don't line up at an angle. Well, the tilted nose is when a guy lines up slanted to the offensive lineman, and usually they line up in between a gap. So it's not directly in front of the guard or the center. It's right between the two, and you're tilted at an angle. So it already gives you some leverage when the play starts. If you're quick enough, you can swim right through them, knife right through them like a hot knife through butter, and get right in the backfield, and he does it beautifully. Now, I don't know if the Ravens are going to allow him to continue to employ this technique, but to me, that's when he was his most effective. When he was a tilted nose over the guard center gap, right there in that A-B gap, he was just a force, a lot to deal with when he was at that tilted nose position, and he was able to use that swim move. I mean, he was in the backfield so quick. There were a number of times where he would get 5-yard tackles for loss on the running back because they couldn't even get hands on him. He'd be in the backfield as soon as the running back got the handoff, and he's slinging them down for a 5-yard loss. It was amazing. You know, I saw him get a sack or two, and he didn't have many sacks, but a lot of his most disruptive and aggressive plays came when he was at that tilting nose using that quick swim move. And it is a doozy. If the Ravens allow him to do this, I think he will be very, very dominant at that nose tackle or a 5 technique position, depending on whatever he decides or the Ravens decide that he is best suited to play. He stacks and sheds very well. I was very impressed with how he was able to discard players that were blocking him and get to the football. To me, sometimes that's a lost art. You know, you see guys, they want to blow up plays, they want to be strong, they want to be quick, they want to get in the backfield. There's something to be said about just standing up an offensive lineman at the point of attack and just watching where the ball carrier decides to go. And if he comes your way, get rid of the offensive lineman and get to the ball carrier. And he does that very efficiently. I talked about him being stout at the point of attack. He's a guy that stands up at the point of attack. And you can't stack and shed if you don't stand up and be stout at the point of attack. He does that, and that allows him to stack and shed as well. He's got a pod. You know how I am about pods. I try to downplay it, but to me it matters. If you've got a paw of doom, you can stick that long arm of the law out there and stop a guy even though you're engaged with an offensive lineman. I want to see it because, again, sometimes that's the difference between a play going for 8 yards and a play going for 3 yards. Is you sticking your arm out there and not allowing that guy to get by you without a fight, or you getting that guy and going for a ride and getting him on the ground. A lot of times, just sticking your arm out there makes all the difference in the world. Even if you just get a piece, and you're not the one that makes the tackle, but you slow him up just enough so a linebacker coming from 2 yards over can come in and make a play, you've done your job. He has a pod. He knows how to use it. Paw of doom for Carl Davis. You go to his cons. He's not a tremendous athlete. He's a 5'0", 740 guy, so he's not blowing you away with athleticism. He's quick. He's got short area quickness, but if you're talking about playing down the line and a play being strung out and Carl Davis coming from his position all the way down to the sidelines, it's not happening. He's not going to get there unless this guy is really pussyfooting around, juking and jiving and trying to get yards that aren't there. If you put your head down and you get up the field and you go outside, Carl Davis can't do anything. He's not the type of guy that's going to run and play down from behind. It's not his game. He's not a tremendous athlete. Limited sack production, and if you want to talk about why this guy fell to the 3rd round, is because teams probably don't see him as a 3-down football player. And so if you want to point to one area that he needs to get better at, it's getting to the quarterback and getting the quarterback on the ground. He got pressures. He got hurries. I'm pretty sure if you look at his numbers and you look at his hurries and his pressures, those are probably pretty high for a guy playing his position at his size, but you want to see guys get quarterbacks on the ground while they still have the football in their hand. He made some plays There's a play against Nebraska, Tommy Armstrong trying to throw the football, and Carl Davis, it's a beautiful play. And really, you want to give a lot of credit to the coverage on this one because this play took a long time to develop for Iowa's defensive line to get in there and get pressure. But nonetheless, his initial rush up the field was somewhat of a power move where he was bull rushing the tackle, got him off balance. Tackle is kind of, hanging on for dear life, and then Carl Davis takes him and one arm slaps his ass out of the way, just throws him on the ground. And on some Reggie White type stuff. Remember that Reggie White sack in the Super Bowl where he takes the tackle with one club, fist, and just drives him over, knocks him on the ground, and goes after Drew Bledsoe and sacks him. Similar here. He takes the offensive lineman, the guard, and clubs him with one fist, boom, knocks him out of the way because he's off balance. Gets to Tommy Armstrong as he's in his throwing motion, hits his arm, ball goes straight up in the air, some pick six, picked off by one of the Iowa defenders, walked into the end zone. So he can get to the quarterback, it just takes some time. And a lot of times in the National Football League, you don't have that kind of time to get to the quarterback. And so this is a good football player though. I really like what he brings to the table in the 3rd round, 90th overall selection. A defensive tackle out of Iowa, Carl Davis for me, is a triple. This was a guy that I thought had a 2nd round grade, and I really like some of the things that he brings to the table, and I think he's going to fit like a glove in this Ravens aggressive attacking style defensive front. And he's going to be a guy that I think will get more sacks than he got in college just because of the athletes that he's playing around. And I think he's going to be a guy that's going to garner some attention along that defensive line. You lose Haloti Ngata, you get a guy like Carl Davis, and I think he's going to fit in and mesh with some of the players the Ravens already have along their defensive line. You go to the 4th round, 122nd overall selection, defensive end out of Kentucky, Zadarius Smith is the selection. Here's a guy with some good size, 6'4", 274 pounds. The question that I ask is, what is he playing? And I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but I'm not quite sure. If I had to put money on it, I'm saying he's going to stand up as an outside linebacker in his Ravens 3-4 defense. Try to have him fit that Paul Kruger role on this team because, again, Terrell Suggs isn't getting any younger, and neither is his counterpart on the other side in Elvis Dumervil. So you got 2 pass rushers getting up there in age. Why not groom a young guy to kind of take over that mantle down the road? I mean, they're still playing at a very high level, are both of those pass rushers. So there's no rush, no urgency, but this is a guy that is very young in his football years. So why not school this guy? Why not take him to the school of hard knocks, Ball So Hard University, and allow him to learn from 2 of the best professors in the game? Sounds good to me. So you look at his length. He's got extreme length, and this is a guy in Zadarius Smith that is extremely long. I talked about him being 6'4", but his wingspan is incredible. He looks like a guy that could easily have a wingspan of that of a 6'11", 7-footer. I mean, his arms are extremely long, and he uses them beautifully, and I'll talk and elaborate on that a little bit later on, much more. Strong at the point of attack. This is a guy that I was impressed because you look at his frame, he's solidly built, so I don't have a problem with the way he's built, but he looks like a guy that can be pushed around at the point of attack, but that wasn't the case. He was a guy, now every now and again, yeah, they'll move him off his spot. Did see him get pushed out of some gaps and uprooted a few times, but more times than not, he's standing up to the point of attack, he's taking on blockers, and they used to line him up on the same side with Bud Dupree. He was a defensive end at Kentucky, and Bud Dupree was the outside linebacker that would usually line up right next to Zadarius Smith. So he would take on that tackle, free up Bud Dupree to rush, and it was a nice combination on that right side of the defense. So they did a lot of good things at Kentucky, and he was the catalyst for that, allowing Alvin Bud Dupree to benefit off of his dirty work in that defense, and they'll be going up against each other. I'm pretty sure they've already had some talks about one being a Raven, the other being a Steeler, so that should be a lot of fun between the 2 of those guys. But this is a guy with good length, and at the point of attack, he's a lot stronger than I was giving him credit for. He stacks and sheds beautifully. To me, this is his best attribute. His ability to use his long arms. Let's start talking about these long go-go gadget arms that he has, because to me, that's his best attribute. His ability to take his hands and put them on the offensive lineman before the offensive lineman gets the chance to engage him. And when he engages first and extends his arms all the way to their full length, he is at his best. And that's how he stacks and sheds. He takes his arms, he extends them, gets them on the offensive lineman, and when the ball carrier comes, he quickly discards the offensive lineman and gets to the, and when he gets his hands on ball carriers, they generally go down. He's really good about getting into the body of the ball carrier and getting them on the ground. So when he extends his arms, I don't feel like there are a lot of guys that can block him because his arms are so long. He's got vines that he's able to dictate what happens on the play and where the offensive lineman is going to go. If he needs him to go to the left, he throws him to the left. If he needs him to go to the right, he throws him to the right. And so he's the guy that dictates the action when he's able to extend his arms out fully. And I thought that's something that if he can continue to do throughout the course of his career, he's going to be a very effective football player. Short area quickness. This isn't a guy that's going to blow you away with pure athleticism. He's not a guy that's flashing a 4.5, 740 or 4.66 640. He's none of those things. This is a 4.83 guy. So you're not looking at him to be a guy that is explosive off the edge with a dynamite first step. But what he does have is good short area quickness. When he disengages from an offensive lineman, he closes the distance between he and the quarterback or he and the ball carrier very quickly. His short area quickness is really, really good. And the reason why it is so good and he excels at that is because of his long limbs. I talked about him having long arms, his legs, they're not short either. And so he eats up a lot of cushion quickly with some big, huge strides and steps. And so this is a guy that closes the distance between he and ball carriers with great short area quickness. He's relentless. He doesn't give up on plays. There's a number of times where he's just getting blocked. He's stonewalled on the play, but because the coverage down the field is okay and the quarterback has been flushed out of the pocket, he's able to continue to fight. Next thing you know, he's back there in the backfield getting a sack or getting a pressure or hurry, forcing an errant throw by the quarterback. So he's a guy that doesn't give up on plays. You can see him out there giving everything he's got when he's on the field. And so I love the way his motor runs. It runs hot each and every single snap. And so he's a relentless football player. He's versatile. There were a number of times where they would stand him up at outside linebacker, which is what I think he will be doing for the Baltimore Ravens on a consistent basis. But he was a defensive end, so he had his hand in the dirt most of the time. And I think he'll do some of that for the Ravens as well. When they decide to go to some nickel sets and they're looking to get as many pass rushers on the field as they can, then don't be surprised if you see this guy slide inside or they're running twists and stunts with him and allowing him to try to get pressure that way. I expect him to do a number of things for this Ravens defense. And right away, I expect him to only see the field in passing situations where they feel like they're trying to get guys on the field that can get pressure on the quarterback. And his role will continue to increase as time plays out. And if injuries are able to be something that is minimized, you won't see this guy as much in his rookie season, but he will eventually get more and more snaps when they become more and more comfortable with what he is as a football player. I think there's a lot here, and his versatility is one of the reasons why I think he'll still be able to see the field early on in his Ravens career. Upside. And I'll talk about his upside and talk about him being raw at the same time because they're one and the same. I could spin it on his head and talk about why his upside is so great. I can tell you why he's raw and why he needs a lot of work. So let's just put the two together. I'll talk about it when we get to his cons, speaking of which he needs to diversify his rush moves a little bit more. Needs more rush move diversity is what he has as a con. Right now, there's not a lot in the cupboard in terms of pass rushing moves. There's a bull rush, there's a grab and throw, and then there's just a rip move inside. Inside and outside. There's not much here in terms of him having a move catalog. He's not a polished pass rusher. That's something that the Ravens are going to have to work on. If they want this guy to have an impact and get to the quarterback consistently and up his college numbers, because they weren't the most aggressive numbers. They weren't eye-popping. They were solid for a guy that was on a defense with some guys that were some heavy hitters like Alvin Bud Dupree. And he was getting a lot of the sacks. Well, this guy is someone that can get to the quarterback, and he had about 7.5 sacks last season. So last year was his best year, and if he's going to improve upon that, he needs to get more moves. He's got a fastball, but there's no changeup, there's no off-speed pitch off of that fastball. There needs to be at least 2 more moves that he can go to in his bag of tricks that are consistent for him, that work to help him get to the quarterback. Right now, he's lagging behind in that department. He's less effective when his arms aren't extended, and I've already touched on that. To me, when he's his best, his arms are fully extended and able to engage the offensive lineman before they engage him with their arms and try to lock him up. He's a guy that if he gets his hands extended, he is a much better football player. When his arms are bent and he's engaged with an offensive lineman, that's usually when he gets stonewalled and does not get off of the line of scrimmage. He's a raw football player. And I talked about the upside. Here's why he's got upside and why he's raw at the same time. You can spin this the positive way and say, well, he's got upside. He's a young guy in football years. This is a guy that didn't play organized football until he got to his senior year of high school. So you're talking about a guy that didn't play any organized football growing up. He didn't have knowledge of the game. He was a basketball player. Got to his senior year of high school. Coach coerced him to play football. It worked out. He ended up getting a scholarship to Kentucky to play football. The rest is history. So this is a guy that still has a lot to learn as a football player. And so you look at Zadarius Smith and what he brings to the table. This is a guy that still has a lot of football left to learn. And again, I can't see a better place him landing in than in Baltimore with T-Sizzle and Elvis Dumerville. He's going to Ball So Hard University. He's going to learn what it means to set an edge in the run game and to get pressure consistently on the quarterback. This is a great landing spot for him. But there are questions. Can he get better as a pass rusher? Can he learn how to use his body to his advantage more often? Is he going to be an outside linebacker or a defensive end? And how is he going to be used in sub packages early on to get his feet wet in the National Football League? I've got questions. Let's see if Zadarius Smith has answers. In the 4th round, 122nd overall selection, defensive end out of Kentucky. Zadarius Smith for me is a double. It's down the line in the corner. He hustles into second base. Thought about going to third. Gun from the outfield sent him back to second base. It's a stand-up double for Zadarius Smith in the 4th round out of Kentucky. You go to another 4th round pick, and this is where Ozzie Newsome does his wizardry right here. 3 4th round selections for this Ravens football team. You want to talk about getting great value? That's where you win or lose in your draft. In the 4th and 5th round, to me, is where you start building the meat and potatoes of your football team. We can talk about 1st and 2nd and 3rd round picks all day long because you know they're going to make your roster. But the 4th and 5th rounders, to me, that's where you either win or lose in your draft, because those are the guys that are going to play special teams. Those are the guys that you're looking for to develop down the road and really be big-time players for you as either special teams contributors on a consistent basis, or a third option as a receiver, or a pass rushing specialist, or a backup tight end, or whatever, backup running back. These are the guys that need to contribute in some form, some shape, way, or form, some capacity in later years down the line. These are the guys that you need to actually strengthen your football team. They got 3 4th round picks, folks. You know, 4th rounders are the new 3rd rounders, 3rd rounders are the new seconds are the new 1st. So you're talking about 3 3rd round picks essentially. In the 4th round, you get 3 guys that are going to come, make this roster, and be contributors on this football team. That's why Ozzie Newsome is the wizard of the draft. You look at their 2nd, 4th round selection, 125th overall, running back out of USC, Javaris Buck Allen is the selection. Solid frame, 6 feet, 221. He runs with an upright style, so he's a guy that can do a number of things with the football in his hands. He's a no-nonsense downhill runner. That's the next pro. Look, I talked about Cameron Artis-Payne and what he was able to bring to the table with another team. And to me, he's a similar runner, a little bit bigger, a little bit more productive throughout the course of his college career. And I think he translates a little bit better than Cameron Artis-Payne does in the league. But here's a guy, and the system that they're running right now currently in Baltimore, and I know Mark Tresman is coming in, and he has an affinity for the back, catching the football out of the backfield. This guy had a lot of catches at USC, so he's going to fit right in with what Mark Tresman, your new offensive coordinator, wants to do. So it just makes a lot of sense what the Ravens are doing right now as a football team on the offensive side. Remember, last year the offense was predicated off of running the football first. And they really had a lot of success last year with Justin Forsett rushing the football. Really didn't have a lot of help, okay? A lot of injuries in that backfield, and you really didn't get the production out of the other backs, which is why Justin Forsett had to carry the load You look at a guy like Javaris Buck Allen to come in, and I think this is a perfect complement to what you have. I don't think he's a feature back in this league, but I think he's a perfect complement to Justin Forsett and what he brings to the table. You insert this guy in third down situations. You give him, much like you used to do with the young back you had, I believe he was out of Temple, that Bernard Pierce, where he used to get whole series where he would come in and he would be the guy in that series. You could do the same thing with Buck Allen. So this is a guy that's a no-nonsense downhill runner. He's getting what's there. If you block a play for 4, he's going to get 4, maybe 5 yards. He's a guy that doesn't waste a lot of motion. One cut and go back, stick his foot in the ground, get up the field, and make something happen. So to me, he's going to fit in with what the Ravens do on the offensive side of football. He runs through arm tackles. I told you he's an upright runner. He's a no-nonsense guy, so he's not going to give you a lot of wiggle, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But what he will do is if you come with a subpar, half-hearted, half-assed arm tackle, he's going to run through that. He's going to break that. He's going to keep on running. And this is one of those guys that he builds up speed. He's not a 0 to 60 guy in 3 steps. He's a guy that gets to top speed after you let him get 7, 8 steps going. So the more arm tackles you let him run through, the harder he is to bring down because he's building momentum as he gets up the field. And all you gotta do is turn on that Nebraska tape. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on when I talk about his burst that he has. But all you gotta do is turn on the Nebraska tape or the Arizona State tape, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But I'm gonna elaborate on that a little bit later on when I get there. He's a receiving threat. And I just talked about Mark Tresman loving to throw the football to the backside of the backfield. This is a guy that, man, they checked it down an awful lot. He caught the football a ton at USC. And so he's going to come in, they're going to throw him the football, he's going to catch it, he's going to get what's there, and he's going to keep you in third and manageable. And in this league, down and distance is important. You want to stay ahead of the sticks. You want to stay in third and manageable. If you look at the percentages in this league, 3rd and 6 or more is a down that is very troublesome for most teams in the league. You get it under 3rd and 5, and you generally have a higher success rate and a higher hit rate of converting on 3rd downs. That's the key in the league, is converting on 3rd downs and keeping drives alive and allowing you to put points up on the board. A guy like Javaris Buck Allen is going to allow you to do that, because on 2nd and 7, when you check it down to him, he's going to pick up 4 yards and make it 3rd and 3, puts you in an advantageous situation, allows you to open up the playbook and do a number of things and keep the sticks moving. So he's a guy that will catch the football out of the backfield. I talked about his burst. Let's talk about that now as his last pro. Shows a little burst. It's not a great burst, but it's enough to scare the defense into wanting to get this guy on the ground immediately. I talked about him building speed. You look at that Nebraska game, there's one run, he breaks through an arm tackle initially at the line of scrimmage, gets through to the second wave, gets 2 defenders that have a good enough angle on them to probably get him on the ground, but accelerates through that angle, outruns these guys. A guy catches him from behind at the 2-yard line and drags him in the end zone for a touchdown for about a 52-yard run. And that's what he can do. If you allow this guy to get a full head of steam, which is what happened, he was able to break that arm tackle at the line of scrimmage and pierce through that double team coming from the 2 defenders that had angles that should have been able to get him on the ground. He was able to accelerate away from those guys. So there's a little bit of burst here. If you allow this guy to get 5 or 6 steps downhill, he's going to pick up speed, and next thing you know, you've got a runaway freight train on your hands named Buck Allen. So this is a guy you do not want to start getting going and getting lathered up. Get him on the ground and save yourself the headache of trying to catch this guy down the field. Cons, no wiggle. There is no wiggle whatsoever in Buck Allen. He's not getting down the field and juking anybody. He's not looking to make anybody miss out in space. He's a guy that's going to lower the shoulder, get what's there. I told you he's a no-nonsense downhill runner. There's no extras here, okay? Don't look for him. There's nothing extras, no superlatives here. This is a guy that gets out in open space and he's just looking to try to run as fast as he can for as long as he can until somebody catches him. And so if he gets out of space and there's one defender to beat, chances are that guy's going to get him on the ground if he can tackle. Limited burst with no long distance speed. This is not a guy that's going to win many foot races. I told you the guy caught him from behind, but they ran out of time. And so At the next level, most of your secondary defenders are going to be as fast, if not faster, than Buck Allen. And if they have an angle, they're going to catch him and get him on the ground. So he's not a guy that's going to hit a lot of home runs. He'll hit an occasional home run, okay? I just told you he was able to split the seam and get down the field and get in the end zone. He'll hit an occasional home run, but he's more of an average guy. He's looking to hit for an average. He'll hit a bunch of doubles, an occasional triple, and once in a blue moon, he'll hit a home run as well. A lot of singles, a lot of doubles, and that's fine, especially for what the Ravens are going to ask him to do. He doesn't need to come in and hit home runs. He just needs to be steady Eddie, and that's exactly what that Buck Allen is going to do for this football team. But no long distance speed. He's a 4.5, 340 guy. He is not going to outrun a lot of people to the end zone, and that's perfectly fine. The Ravens don't have a problem with him not winning foot races. Subpar pass pro. Now this is a bigger issue. If he wants to get on the field on third downs, which to me is where his first and most immediate impact can be on his team, is on third downs, because he's such a good pass catcher. He needs to block better. He's a featherweight in the pass pro department. I mean, there were too many times where I saw this guy, and for a 221-pound back, I want to see you be more physical than this. He's got to get physical, man. He's coming up with these half-hearted shoulder taps. And guys are just running through him. Man, get your ass out of the way, man. Just swatting him like a fly. Get out of here with that nonsense. He's got to be much more physical. For a guy that runs as physically as he does, I'm surprised that he's so soft in pass protection. This guy's just coming in. Guys are blowing him up. He's throwing his shoulder out there. It's having little to no effect on guys. He's just got to be better, man. He's got to be more sound in his technique. And he's got to sit down, and he's got to be more physical. He's just got to say, all right, it's the test the wheels. Who's going to win, me or you? Am I going to be tougher than you, or are you going to be tougher than me? On tape, all I saw was other guys out-muscling him and out-physicaling him. He needs to be tougher at the point of attack when blocking. Guys were blowing him up and still getting to the quarterback and rushing the throws of the USC quarterback, and that can't happen. He's got to be better, and I expect him to get better. To me, it's a technique thing, and then it's him just saying, hey, intestinal fortitude time, gut check, what I'm gonna do? He gotta get tougher, man. I look at him, he's too tough of a running back to block as soft as he does. He's gotta be better, but there's a lot to like here. For what the Ravens are going to ask him, it's a good compliment. In the 4th round, 125th overall selection, running back out of USC, Buck Allen for me is a double, another solid selection by Ozzie Newsome. What's new? You go to their last 4th round selection, 136th overall, cornerback out of Texas Southern, Trey Walker is the pick. And I should call him a defensive back because I'm not sure with his size, he could easily be a safety, he could easily be a cornerback. I'm pretty sure the Ravens are going to explore each and every single opportunity to put this guy at the cornerback position before they make any hasty decisions to move him to potentially the safety position. But right now, they were hurt last year at corner. You know they love their big corners. Just look at Jimmy Smith and what he brings to the table. So this is a 6'2" guy in the mold of a Jimmy Smith. I think Jimmy was much more well put together coming out of college, out of Colorado. So I think I don't want to compare him to Jimmy Smith right now because his frame is nowhere near what Jimmy Smith's was coming into the league. But this is a guy with a lot of ability. Let's talk about him. He's a 6'2" long cornerback. I kind of touched on that already. It's a guy that's pretty big, and you look at him on tape and you see that he's a long cornerback. And teams, and the tapes that I watched, they pretty much stayed clear of this guy because of what he was in that conference. He was a playmaker, a guy that could do some things, and they pretty much didn't look his way. A lot of times when they did try to challenge him, he would make some plays on them. So he's a willing and able tackler, and that is very, very pleasing to my eyes because at first, the first couple of snaps, I was a little disappointed because he's got a nonchalant attitude, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. You can tell I'm the big man on campus. I'm good. I know I'm good. So he was kind of standing around, and guys were running to his side. They weren't quite getting to him and where he was, and he was playing off. So you weren't really seeing him come up and be aggressive in the run game. But later on, as I watched more and more tape, I started to appreciate what he did in the run game as a tackler, being physical. There was one play, they threw out a check down, a swing route to the flats, and he comes down and he murders that guy out of the backfield. It's a beautiful, and it's really well formed. I mean, it was a well-formed tackle, comes up and just smashes the guy. There's another play, they run inside, he's able to take a great angle, get to the ball carrier, and rip the football out. So he's a guy that'll come up, he'll shoot your cuffs, he'll get physical, he'll make some plays. He's a willing and an able tackler. So I like that about Trey Walker. He's got playmaking ability. He uses his frame, he can climb the ladder, go get the football. He'll break on some plays, make some plays on the football that way. So and I just told you, he went in a cookie jar, stuck his hand in, came out with a cookie. So he's a guy that will go and make plays. He's a playmaker, and I think the Ravens are very enamored with the fact that this kid can make some plays at 6'2". He can press at the line of scrimmage. I didn't see this enough on tape to say that this is definitely a strength, but I saw it, and at 6'2", they're going to use this in Baltimore. He's going to get better at pressing. But I saw this about 3 times on tape. There was a lot more off coverage than I was comfortable with, but again, when you talk about scheme and what that dictates, if that's what he's comfortable doing, fine. But I did see him come up, get in guys' faces, press, use that off arm, a lot of times the inside arm to drive him outside, which is where he wanted him to go. So that's beautiful to me. I saw the press, I saw him get up, and he got a good jam on him, and he's not a guy with a lot of speed, so if you can negate some of the receiver speed at the line of scrimmage by being physical with them, that's really empowering for a cornerback. So that's all the better for a guy like Trey Walker, who doesn't have the best long distance speed, but has some length, has some height, and if he can just stay in the hip pocket of a receiver and wall them off and keep them close to the sidelines, he's going to have a play because of his length each and every single time. You look at his awareness in zone coverage, that's another strength. This is a guy that played 7-8 yards off the ball consistently. Eyes were usually in the backfield, had some reasonable awareness of where the receiver was in proximity to what the quarterback was trying to do. And if you made a mistake, you tried to throw, he was really good in zone coverage when they tried to flood his zones. A lot of times they would run 2 receivers in combination routes in his zone, and he would kind of stay in the middle of those 2 routes and play both of them at the same time and kind of discourage the quarterback from throwing in his area. So that was also impressive, is that when they had combination routes coming his way, he was able to kind of play both of them and be a middleman of sorts and kind of discourage the quarterback from throwing the football, but also at the same time keep his deep third responsibility and not let anybody behind him in the process. So that was very impressive to me when he was in zone coverage. That lets me know he's a very aware football player when in zone coverage. He's got closing speed. This is a guy, plays off the ball like I said, but won't hesitate to stick his foot in the ground and drive on the football and try to make a play on it when it is thrown in his direction. So he's got closing speed, he's got the ability, and again, you don't always have to be fast, you just need agility, and he's got length. That's something you can't teach. Either you got it or you don't. He's a 6'2" corner with extreme length, so that helps him with closing speed as well, because he can still be a step behind, but because he's got those go-go gadget arms that extend, he can still knock the football away or get his hands on it and possibly pick it up because he's so long. So that helps with his closing speed as well. You go to his cons. He was nonchalant early on, especially when I first started watching tape. There's a lot of bad technique, a lot of him just standing up at the cornerback position, not really in a crouch, not really in a stance, not really in a back pedal per se, just kind of just lagging around and kind of looking around, quarterback, wide receiver, what's going on. And I really wasn't a big fan of that, especially when they were running to his side. He would still be kind of creeping around and then kind of just strifing around and kind of engaging the receiver instead of going and being aggressive and forcing the issue and forcing the action. He's kind of just standing around, and so I want to see him have more of a sense of urgency. Yeah, they're running the ball to your side. How about you go get in the play and make something happen and not just stand around and kind of be in the way. Just go do something, you know. And so his nonchalant attitude, I didn't see that the entire time, but I saw it more than enough to make me uncomfortable with that. They'll clean that up though. That's to me not a big issue, but it was something that I noted on tape. Level of competition. Of course, he played at Texas Southern. I mean, one of the tapes I watched was against Jackson State. I mean, what are we talking about here? It was some bad football too. There was a lot of bad football going on in that conference. So, I mean, from all the different tapes that I watched, I'm like, man, some bad football going on. A lot of fumbles, a lot of sloppy plays. So you worry about the level of competition, but you can't teach 6'2". You can't teach, 192 or whatever this guy is. So the situation is, you get an athlete, you get a guy with some size. You can't teach those things. You either got it or you don't. We'll get him in our building, in our system, and we'll teach him up. and mold him the way we want him to be, and that's the situation you see with Trey Walker. He needs to bulk up. I just told you he was 6'2". When I say you're 6'2", I expect you to be at 200 pounds or above it, not sub 200 pounds. You're below that Mendoza line. You're a lot lighter than you should be. At 6'2", you should have some meat on your bones. As a skinny guy like 192, that's not allowed. He's got to put on some more weight, be a lot stouter. And at the point of attack, when in the run game, I saw some guys throwing him around and flinging him on the ground. He would get up looking for a flag. Don't get up looking for a flag. Get tough. Man up. Get in the weight room. You want to stop guys from throwing you on the ground like a rag doll? Get in the weight room. So he needs to bulk up, and I think that's something that the Ravens will work on immediately when they get this guy in their facility. Also, long distance speed. He's a 4.53 guy. Look, with that kind of length, I'm willing to dismiss it if you are. 4.53 with a 6'2". Cornerback with a wingspan probably of a 6'8" guy, I'm good, man. I am perfectly fine with the way this guy runs at the cornerback position. So it could be an issue if he's not able to use his length to his advantage, but if he's able to use his length, that's not going to be a problem at all. In the 4th round, 136th overall selection, cornerback out of Texas Southern, Trey Walker, is another double for Ozzie Newsome and the Baltimore Ravens. To me, they took a chance on a small school corner that had some attributes you can't teach. And so they look at this kid and they see a lot of things that they like, reminiscent of Jimmy Smith, another big corner. You know how this league is going now. I talk about this all the time. Corners that are big with some length are in vogue right now because receivers are getting bigger and bigger every year. You got guys on the outside that are north of 6 feet. You're doing something at the cornerback position. It's a 6'2" corner. And with a little bit of work and some time and some effort, this kid could be a good football player. And that's what the Ravens see. And that's why they took him in the 4th round. You go to the 5th round, 171st overall selection, tight end out of Delaware. Nick Boyle is the selection. Here's a 6'4", 268-pound tight end. What does that tell you? Right off the bat, that tells you we got a blocking tight end on our hands, and that's exactly what this guy is. Next pro, traditional blocking tight end. He blocked a heck of a lot at Delaware. All of the tapes that I put on, I saw 80% of the tape him blocking. He did not have huge receiving numbers. When he did get the football thrown to him, he did make some plays, and that's also something that caught the attention of teams in the league, which is why he got invited to the Senior Bowl and was invited to the combine and things of that nature. He made a name for himself at Delaware, but he made his bones blocking at the line of scrimmage at Delaware. He's physical, physicality. There was one play, I saw him block into the whistle, they blow the whistle, he takes and he pitches the guy on the ground. It's a small, helpless safety. Because I just told you this guy's 6'4", 268. What safety you know is 6'4", 268? Nobody. So you get a safety that's probably about 205 pounds or so, coming up thinking he's about to do something. Nick Boyle engages him at the 2nd level, drives this guy about 6 yards out of play. They're out of bounds. The referee blows the whistle. Nick Boyle dumps him on his neck out of bounds. They throw a flag for personal foul, unsportsmanlike conduct and all that nonsense and unnecessary roughness. I said, man, good for you, man. Rough those young little guys up. And so he's a physical guy. He's physical at the point of attack. He plays through the whistle. He's got a physicality about him that's going to allow him to succeed and excel potentially at the next level. He can catch the football. I already kind of touched on that. I'm going to elaborate on it briefly. This guy can catch the football. You know, just because he's not the best athlete in the world and because he's primarily a blocking tight end doesn't exclude him from the passing game. This guy can catch the football. If you throw it to him, he's got good enough hands to make plays. There was one play, he was in the end zone, quarterback scrambles out of the pocket, extending the play. He's able to win on the scramble drill, uncover. Quarterback throws the football behind him. He's going to his right, Bahal's behind him to his left. He stops, plants, dives back to his left, all hands, brings the football in, touchdown. The guy can catch the football, you just got to throw it to him. And so when he gets opportunities to get a little bit of sugar, he's a guy that takes advantage of it, so he can catch the ball and can be an asset for you in situations where you want to go 2-3 tight, play action fake. You know, Joe Flacco, one of the best play action fake quarterbacks in the league. You want to put 2-3 tight ends on the field? This is a guy that can be a threat in your 13 personnel. You know, you go to a 12 personnel, depending on what you decide you want to run. This is a guy that can be a threat in your 12 or your 13 package. So don't ever see this guy being a feature tight end. But he's a backup tight end. He's a third tight end. He's going to help you on special teams as well. So this is a guy that brings a lot to the table in a football player. He's a football player, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Deceptive athlete. No, he's not a great athlete, but he will sneak up on you if you allow him to. If you play him straight up for what he is, a football player, you'll be fine. He won't run by you, he won't surprise you. But if you underestimate this guy, oh, he's not gonna do nothing. He's a 5-flat athlete, he's not running anywhere. He will catch the football, he will make you miss, he will run you over, he will jump over you, he will make some plays. If you just respect him for what he is, you'll be fine, he won't surprise you, and you won't have any problems out of Nick Boyle. It's when you disrespect this man, it's when you're gonna have a problem on your hands. He's a leader. He was a captain at Delaware, a guy that very likable on and off the field, very well respected within his locker room. You need character guys. You need high character football players. The more of those you have in the locker room, the less problems you have coming out of your organization. Simple as that. He's another high character guy you add to your locker room. Cons. To me, there's one con that really extends its way out, and there's so many different layers of this for Nick Boyle that it really limits him as a football player, but it doesn't define him as a football player. He's a better football player than an athlete. I can't state that enough. All right, he does all the little things. He blocks. He's going to be a guy that catches the football. He's the guy that springs you on a 64-yard run because he sets the edge in the run game and then gets to the second level and gets a chip on another guy that allows you to get that one step you need to get out there and get around the corner and score a touchdown. He's the guy that sells the play action fake and uncovers and becomes wide open and catches a walk-in touchdown from the 2-yard line because he sold the fake so well, made you buy the fake, and then sold you that bill of goods and then got open for a touchdown. He does all the small things, all the little things, the intangibles that makes him a great football player, but he's not an athlete. He's a 5-flat 40 guy. Where's he running? We got offensive linemen that are 320 pounds running 4.78s, and this guy's running a 5-flat. So he's not running anywhere. He's not scaring anybody with. He ran the slowest double move. I watched some Senior Bowls on this guy. He ran the slowest double move I've ever seen in my entire life. He runs a stutter and go. And he goes, and then he goes back up. The cornerback actually fell for the out because you see this big lumbering tight end, you expect him to run something shallow. So he gives him a little stutter like he's going to the out and then goes back up toward the post to the seam route. And the corner actually bit the out route, but because he's so slow, he just jumped in front of the pass when he went up the field because it was the slowest double move in the history of double moves. It was terrible. But that doesn't define him as a football player. He's such a good football player that does all the small things well. I think you gotta respect him, and I expect him to make this football team. I think there's a niche that he can carve out for himself in this league. There's a place for Nick Boyle in this league. Even if it's just exclusively as a blocking tight end, he can play 7 years in this league as a serviceable backup blocking tight end. And when you draft a guy like that for a specialty in the 5th round, 171st overall selection, tight end out of Delaware, Nick Boyle is a double for me. There's a place in the league for him, and he has an elite trait. If you're not going to do a lot of things well, you better do one thing extremely well, and he does, and that's blocking. Guy does a lot of good things, but he excels in the run game as a blocker, in the pass game as a pass protector. He's going to find a way to make this roster and carve out a niche for himself on this Ravens football team. Another 5th round selection, 176th overall pick, offensive lineman out of Tennessee State, Robert Myers is the pick. 6'5", 326-pound offensive guard. Now he played tackle in 2013, watched some 2013 tape, as well as some 2014. I think I like him better at guard too. We'll talk about, let's get through these pros first before I jump on his con. Technically sound. When I hear 326 pounds, small school guy, I don't expect him to block like he's from Iowa, okay? But that's what I got on tape. This guy is in his stance, and he's got the typewriter going. He's here. He's here. He's got that mirror drill. You know, you see him doing in the combine where they can't touch, they're just supposed to follow the guy. He's got his hands up, and that's what I see from these Iowa, these Wisconsin guys, these Big Ten offensive linemen. They're technically sound. Not a lot of fundamental flaws with those guys. They have it down pat to a science. They're being taught well. This kid looked like he was being taught by some kind of offensive line ace, because what I saw him doing, you don't see from regular small school offensive linemen. Normally, they're just mauling people. They're bigger, they're more physical, probably a little bit more athletic than the defender in front of them, and they just mauling guys. But that's not what he was doing. He was actually moving their feet, shuffling, hands up in a ready position. I was like, wow, okay, didn't expect that. Very technically sound. With that typewriter comes a heavy punch. So he's here, arms up, boom, gives you a nice hearty punch. That kind of caves your chest in, knocks the wind out of you a little bit. Heavy punch. You can see guys really kind of laboring after that punch, not rushing as hard. So he's a heavy-handed individual. That's something else that'll be beneficial to him moving down the line. He can climb to the second level. Again, very surprising for a guy that I didn't think was much of an athlete to see him get a piece of the guy at the line of scrimmage and then get to the second level and seal off the defender. Very impressive for a 326-pounder that I didn't think had enough athleticism to do that. He actually did that. That was very pleasing to see. He has versatility. I told you, he played tackle in 2013. He started 12 games in 2014. 11 of them at guard and 1 at tackle. So again, you get some versatility here. Do I trust him at tackle? No, I don't. I don't want to see him at tackle at all. Here's why. Let's go to his cons. Limited athletically. This is a guy that does not have a lot of athleticism at all, especially when you ask him to move vertically. When he has to shuffle his feet sideways, or excuse me, horizontally. When he has to shuffle his feet horizontally, sideways, to stay in front of a guy outside. When he's inside a guard, he didn't have a problem because there's not as much space for a guy to maneuver and run around him. When you get to the outside where there's space and opportunity, guys were running laps around him, and I'm not comfortable with him being outside as the only blocker out there to protect at tackle. He's definitely a guard at the next level, and I think a lot of that has to do with his athleticism. He needs to get functionally stronger. For a 326-pound offensive lineman, you would expect him to be a lot more physical with a lot of these guys that he's blocking. And again, you know what my prerequisite is for a small school guy? When I turn on the tape, I don't want to see anything but one thing from you, and that's total domination. When I turn on the tape, they shouldn't even have to spot shadow who you are. Give me 3 plays of watching the tape, and I should be able to pick out the guy that I'm here to watch. I couldn't find the guy that I was supposed to watch. On many plays, I found myself searching for number 70, searching for number 70. And so that's not a situation where I'm comfortable, where guys are being able to bull rush you, or you get to the second level, but you're not able to finish a guy because you're not physical enough. He needs to turn some of that flashy body into some muscle. And I think that's something that the Ravens are going to have to work on with this kid as he gets into their facility and their program. Level of competition, you know I had to go there, and this is a guy who played at Tennessee State. Not the best competition in the world, so you always ask yourself in the back of your mind, how good is this kid really? The guys you were playing up against week in and week out aren't NFL caliber players, so we'll see how that translates to the next level. But in the 5th round, 176th overall selection, out of Tennessee State, offensive lineman Robert Myers for me is a single. Wasn't really enamored, but if Ozzie tells me this guy's a football player, maybe he is. I just didn't see it. I need more help. Look, John Urschel, I watched the tape on him a couple years ago when Ozzie picked this guy out of Penn State, and they told me how smart he was. I'm like, look, this isn't rocket science, it's football. This is bronze over brains. Well, John Urschel came in and he showed that Ozzie saw something in this kid, and he turned out to be a damn good football player. Robert Myers could be the same deal. We don't know. I'm just saying, I didn't see enough on tape to feel good about this kid. He is a single. You round out the Ravens' 9-player draft in the 6th round, 204th overall selection. Wide receiver out of Georgia Tech, Darren Waller is the pick. Of all the selections in this draft, this is the one I am most intrigued, because you know how it is when you get a height, weight, speed specimen. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but those are the guys that intrigue you the most. 6'6", 238. 6'6", 238. That's what I just said. We're talking about a huge wide receiver. We're not talking about one of these lumbering guys that can't get around. This is a next pro true definition of a height, weight, speed specimen. Al Davis, God rest his soul, may he rest in peace, is doing backflips in his grave right now. Al Davis is like, man, I would have done flips to get this guy in the draft. 6'6", 238, 4.46, 40. Dude is flying at 6'6". Big long strides, blowing past safeties, running past cornerbacks like they standing still. This guy is legit. There's some things he's got to work on. Of course, he comes from Georgia Tech. If you watch college football and you go to Georgia Tech, what does that mean? You know what it means. You a hell of a blocker. That's the next pro. This dude is a tremendous blocker. And look, you say what you want about Georgia Tech. You know they run the triple option and it's a lot of running and the receivers don't get a lot of bones thrown their way. But when they do, they're for big yardage. That fits pretty much the profile of what Darren Waller is as a football player. But look at the players that came out, and not all of them played in the same system, but Georgia Tech has been known to be a factory for receivers. They churned out 2 more this year. They had a guy named DeAndre Smelter that also was drafted in the draft this year. This kid, Darren Waller, you look back, Demarius Thomas came out of Georgia Tech in this same exact system. Stephen Hill has been the only one that hasn't panned out thus far in the league. He's another big height, weight, speed specimen. Calvin Johnson, another guy that came out of that Georgia Tech factory of wide receivers. So this is a group that usually is able to produce big time, long, tall, rangy blocking athletes. Here's another one. He's a mismatch nightmare. I mean, 6'6", 238. Who's walking around able to cover that kind of size? You tell me. I don't give a damn. Richard Sherman, Darrell, they can't jump as high as this cat is and go up and get the football. They can be in as good a coverage as they want. This guy is 6'6", 238. Okay? That is a mismatch nightmare. If he can develop, and this is different. Because you know what I thought of when I thought about this kid and I saw him? I said, you know what he reminds me of? Tommy Streeter. Remember that cat out of the University of Miami? Came in and I had high hopes for him. He was skin and bones though. This kid is 238. There's some meat on this body here. This is a physical specimen we talking about. This is not Tommy Streeter, okay? This is something else. This is something else. So there's upside. I don't have to tell you why there's upside here. I don't. I don't. 6'6", 238, 4.46, 40. Tremendous blocker. Can go up and get the football. I don't need to tell you why there's upside here. He just needs to be groomed. That's it. Somebody needs to get with this young fella and teach him the finer points of playing a wide receiver position. I'm gonna talk about something else that could be an alternative for him a little bit later on. Let's jump into his cons. Limited production at Georgia Tech, of course. It's a running first offense. It's a run second offense, throw third, okay? So this is a team that runs. It's a run dominant, run heavy football team. And when you least expect it, when you're looking for run, here comes a deep bomb. So this was a team with huge average per catch. They were going down the field. They had guys that could make big plays. And then when you were looking for the deep ball, they would run a shallow route, outbreak it to the sidelines, boom, catch it. So there's not a lot of route running. Let's talk about him being raw, because he's got upside, but he's also raw. Here's why he's raw. I just told you he played at Georgia Tech. Not a lot of route running. This guy doesn't know how to run routes, okay? He doesn't know what he's doing at receiver. He doesn't. He doesn't know what he's doing. He just knows, I'm gonna go out here, I'm gonna go after the football. They didn't teach him to run routes. He didn't run a 12-yard back to 10-yard comeback. He didn't run, or maybe he did. He did run that towards the sideline, so I take that back. He didn't run a deep post. He didn't run a dig route. He didn't run slants on a regular basis. This isn't a guy that's running a tri-route tree. He didn't run deep outs necessarily. He would run post-ups, spin, pivot, boom, out of bounds, catch the football. So there wasn't a lot of route running involved. There's a lot here to like though. Is he a tight end? That's the next con. That's the last con. Is he a tight end? The Ravens could, play around with that. If this kid isn't as adept at the wide receiver position, put on another 10 pounds or so, this guy could be a mismatch nightmare tight end. But I want to try this guy at receiver as many times as possible. I'm gonna bang my head against the wall. Even if it's not working, I'm gonna keep trying, because you don't get 6'6", 238, 4'4", 640 every day. You gotta try to make this kid work. You got to. If he does, look out AFC North. You got another problem on your hands. in the 6th round, 204th overall selection, wide receiver out of Georgia Tech. Darren Waller for me is a double. I am intrigued. To say you have my attention is an understatement right now, okay? This guy right here, to me, could be a problem 2 years down the road. He needs some grooming. He needs to be schooled. It's great to have a guy like Steve Smith in his locker room with him because he's going to teach him the finer points of becoming a wide receiver. They can coach this kid up. Man, I would love to see the music him and Joe Flacco can make together, man. Joe throwing that peel down the field 55 yards to a streaking Darren Waller. Woo! I digress. That's the Ravens 2015 NFL Draft. Another gem tossed up by Sir Ozzie Newsome. And so, let's tally up the points and see what this Ravens draft was able to compile. 2 home runs back-to-back to start off the draft. A triple right afterwards. So that's 11. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doubles in all. Ozzie hitting for average over and over again, which nets you 3 doubles bonuses. You finish up the draft with 1 single, and so you add that all up, it's 28 total points for the Ravens. You divide by their 9 selections, and you get a total of 3.1. That is a solid triple for the Ravens. He did it again. Ozzie Newsome hitting another triple, having the Ravens stockpiling more talent for the future. It's just what the man does. In Ozzie, we trust. And so, that's the Ravens 2015 NFL Draft wrap-up. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab room. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and everything in the National Football League season. Okay. Who's next? There's plenty more where that came from. While you're here, subscribe to the channel. If you want more Louie T, be sure to follow me on Twitter at InTheLabRoom, or you can like the Facebook page at In The Lab Room. That's In The Lab Room on Facebook and at In The Lab Room on Twitter. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so.